Well, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting of Middleton Plan Commission for August 9th, 2022 to order. And the first item is the roll call. Abby.
Erdman Hermans,
Here.
Harp,
Here.
Ramsey,
Here.
Slavish,
Here.
and Brar is present. Bruce and Schaefer are absent and excused.
All right. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the, actually it says public hearings, but that's what go first, Abby? That, okay, I guess then
Can
go
you
to
flip
the,
back one?
Oh,
yeah, you got,
It's to set the public hearing.
okay. Okay, so that's right. So, okay, we need a, well, we need approval of the minutes, need a motion to approve the minutes.
Ramsey will move to approve the minutes.
Need a
Harp, second.
Okay, any questions or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion through the plan commission minutes of July 26, 2022, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes. On to agenda items, set a public hearing for a conditional use permit for CXC Outdoor Recreation and Sports Center, 4355 Schwartz Road. And it is to set a public hearing for Tuesday, September 13th at 7 p.m. And I make a motion to do that. Need a second.
Ramsey will second.
Okay, any questions or comments? This is a motion to set a public hearing for Tuesday, September 13th at 7 p.m. for the conditional use permit for cross-country skiing outdoor recreation and sports center at 4355 Schwartz Road. If there are no questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion to set this public hearing for September 13th at 7 p.m. say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I would just make one comment though that I will not be present at that meeting. So just in case there's any concern for a quorum with anyone else.
Wow, Abby, you heard this now. So let's make sure that if there's a Gretchen won't be there. So do you know if anybody else who might not be there, Abby?
I have not heard of anyone else, but this might be a good time to just mention, for those of you who have been emailing our office manager, Diane Atto, I don't know if you received an email notification, but she left the city, she took another job. So if you aren't gonna make it to the September 13th meeting, just email me, Mark, or Daphne. Don't email Diane.
Okay.
Yeah, Diane's on to or off to green pastures. Okay, all right. We are on to item number 2. Design review revisions for fence. This is the SAS Commercial Building 7912 Forsythia Court. Abby.
Yeah, this is a request for design review for a new fence, and I did notice it looked like there might be a representative for the applicant on the call this evening. This is along the Beltline. It is in an area that is zoned for B3, which is Highway Business District. They're requesting approval for a chain link fence, and as the Plan Commission will remember, we aren't viewing chain link as being consistent with the design requirements in the zoning ordinance. I do want to just state clearly though that there are a lot of chain link fences that have been approved in the Airport Road Business District, which is the PDD that's right next door to this property. We are investigating a different concern that arose, which is related to the zoning of the property. B3 does not permit outdoor storage activities, and there's quite a bit of outdoor storage, and it's expanded quite a bit over the last several years. And so our recommendation is for deferral this evening, but I do want to give the applicant a chance to speak if they wish to.
Okay, let's hear from the applicants. If they're there, that's the Madison Fence Company or who is there?
Yep, that's us.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is just to, put a fence in to kind of revive that property, and I'm willing to do different styles. I just was more curious what would be allowed. I'm the owner's grandson, and so I'm kind of the property manager of the building now. And we're also having our business there as well, too.
Could we have your name for the,
Yep, it's David Olson, Olsen.
thank you.
So one of the thoughts that I had, and this is kind of based on the precedent that was set recently with the Cool Hand Customs fence, where we allowed two sides to be wood privacy, more decorative, and one side to be chain link. That could be a solution here where we would allow the beltline facing side to be chain link, which is consistent with all of the fencing up and down the beltline. And then wood privacy on the other two sides, which would also help to screen the outdoor storage that's happening there.
Yep. Yeah, and sorry,
Does that make sense to you, David?
that does. Yep.
Yeah, I guess people see the fence and if it's something attractive, well, they will say, hey, I want to go there, right? So, and as Abby said, we do have some areas there which have the chain link fence and yeah, well, anyway, I'll be repeating it. So yes,
Yeah. Would like a vinyl fence be allowed as well?
Abby?
I would leave that up to the discretion of the Plan Commission members.
Okay.
And what do you mean by a vinyl fence?
Like a white vinyl privacy fence. It's a type of fence that, just lasts forever and doesn't rot.
So it wouldn't be, you're not talking about the chain link with the vinyl pieces that go through it. You're talking about an actual vinyl fence?
You got it. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I have no problems, no issues with that.
I would say work with the staff and come up with some proposal which you are happy, staff is happy, city is happy. And let's create a happiness all the way around, right? Would that work, David?
Yes, that will.
I would also mention that that's also a bike and pedestrian path that goes along there.
Thank you, Chris. So you want something to be looking good.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Please raise your hand. So let's, or just speak up. So any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we need a motion to defer and ask the applicant to work with the staff.
Ramsey will move to defer.
Slavish will second.
Any further questions or comments? And this is, Dave, you work with the staff and come up with something acceptable next time. So, okay, all those in favor of the motion to defer the design review revisions for fence at SAS Commercial Building 791 to Forsythia Court, say aye.
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 Anyone
Just to
opposed?
just to be clear, the deferral is to investigate the zoning issues. Okay.
And work with the staff. Yes, that's good. All right. Dave, you have any final questions? Let's vote it on if you have any questions now or concerns, anything.
Nope.
Okay, all right. So, okay, we're on to item number 3. This is the zoning ordinance rewrite project. Update from project staff, feedback and bulk and land use tables, referral of draft to environmental corridor overlay district and shoreland wetland overlay district sections. And this is Mark Opitz.
Thank you, Mayor. Daphne, if you could please go to the PowerPoint. I'm going to walk through this pretty quickly with the assumption that most people have, that all of you have reviewed the PowerPoint in advance, but I want to highlight a few things.
But take your time, Mark. It's very important. You don't have to hurry up. So it's okay. I have gone through it a couple of times, but you will have an entirely different perspective. I think take your time. That's okay. So,
Well, I just don't want to repeat something that's in the packet verbatim, so I will just,
Yeah.
but I will take you up on your offer, Mayor.
that's very hard. Mhm.
So with the help of Vanderwall, our planning consultant that's been working on this project, I'm providing this overview through this presentation tonight. These slides were prepared by Vanderwall, but I will be the one who's the primary liaison with the Plan Commission as we move through the zoning ordinance rewrite project. So on the second, actually, I probably should, I'm looking at my own presentation. Maybe I should be the one sharing. That might be easier. Daphne, I don't know what you have on the screen.
It's the bulk dimension and land
Yeah,
use.
I just have, okay, actually, go ahead, Daphne, this will work fine. So
Okay.
I'll look off your presentation. So the focus of tonight's meeting is to introduce you and get feedback on the bulk dimensions and land use tables that Vanderwall prepared early on in our project. The tables are in your packet, and hopefully you were able to zoom in on them and look at them in whatever detail you wish. Quickly, an overview of both. Next slide, please. The bulk dimensions refers to the lot requirements, principal building setbacks, and accessory building setbacks. These are the dimensions for all lots and buildings in each zoning district. And I'm going to focus tonight on the two-family zoning district as an example. So next slide, please. The red text is the existing ordinance. Black text is the new proposed ordinance. And I know this is very hard to see, but I will try and go through an example here. So currently, our R2 zoning allows 10,000 square foot minimum lot area, and that is still the same in this new proposed ordinance. The changes are the front setback would allow the 24 foot is the current ordinance, and 20, so it would be a reduced setback down to 20 feet since that's in the black text. So, and I really am not going to go through this in any detail because it's just not, that's just one example. So let's go to the next slide.
So Mark, why are you doing that? I mean, would you give the reasoning for it?
I will. I think that I want to focus on the takeaways really instead of
Okay.
through an
Okay.
example, because it's just, there's too many details to go through this, district by district. So the goal here is that more dimensions are being proposed to provide increased clarity, promote infill opportunities around the city, allow for greater density, and to limit interpretations. So by that, I mean the zoning interpretation. So we're trying to make this as clear as possible so that the property owners and prospective developers know what the ordinance states and don't have to rely on zoning staff interpretations. Second bullet, standards establish a building envelope for each property with flexibility in how the property is used within that envelope. And the third is reviewed. The Vanderwall, working with me, reviewed the last 10 years of approved plan development districts to create the proposed dimensions of the 4 new multifamily districts. In your packet, you will find that the new districts, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 10 new residential districts ranging from single family, low, medium to high density, and then two family in terms of duplex and 2 flat. So duplex is being lateral and flat being vertical. And then there's mixed use, multifamily, low, medium, urban and high density categories as well. And finally, a mobile home category. So that's 10. So that is where the PUDs, the PDDs that they reviewed over the last 10 years helped inform what those dimensions should be for these 10 new categories. Next slide, please. Continuing the takeaways, for existing proposed districts that are very similar, they retained many of the dimensions that have worked in the past. They modified some to reflect modern development practices. And then for the new districts, many of which I just cited, they match the existing dimensions of other districts with modern development practices. So they looked at comparables. Next slide. The second set of tables are the land use tables. There we have when I printed it out, it was 3.5, 4 pages. P stands for permitted, C is conditional, And this is really meant to be a one stop, easy to read, allow people to very easily see what the land uses are permitted and conditional uses for each district. Again, this points to an example, which I'm not going to go through now because it's hard to see on the screen. Next slide, please. The key takeaways for this set of tables is that more land uses are proposed to provide increased clarity, promote mixing of uses, reflect more modern land use types, and to limit interpretations by the zoning administrator and zoning staff. Secondly, Vanderwall is trying to limit the use of conditional use permits and instead use base zoning districts to accommodate different uses. For example, a school, which is currently a conditional use in a single family district, that's how our current code accommodates schools, it would now be a permitted principal use in the institutional zoning district. That's just an example. So in some of these categories are that are being created are, in addition to institutional, there's a well, institutional and then mixed use neighborhood, mixed use avenue, mixed use urban, and mixed use downtown are additional categories. And then industrial has several categories, and then there's several other categories. Other takeaways for the land use tables, they really are trying to, we are trying to link common land uses together to group them together. Office versus health, real estate, insurance, business, finance, office, etc. Each land use has built-in standards associated with it, standards pertaining to parking, buffers, etc. And then also the goal is to provide new minor accessory and temporary land uses, for example, swing sets or dumpsters, to provide clarity, enforcement, and compliance situations.
So Mark, talking about swing set, so now, I mean, if you needed to put a swing set, you needed to come to the city to get a permission?
We, in our current zoning ordinance, we have always had a list of accessory uses, which was just a cursory list. It had, for example, landscape features, which included walk steps, railing, terraces, trellises, bird feeders, baths, swing sets, sandboxes, compost storage, sprinkler systems, landscape lighting, clotheslines, etc. Those were just listed as permitted uses. So it's really not a new idea.
Okay.
It's just saying that people are allowed to have these on their property, on their premises, and it's listed by various districts. Obviously, having a table like you saw on the previous screen, where these are just boxes, it's easier to read that instead of having it all listed in text form. So although the ordinance does that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Next slide, please. And continuing the takeaways for the land use tables, most land uses are proposed to work together within the same development project. And then an example is in a new mixed use building, we want to make sure that everything's compatible. So if you have office, indoor sales and services, professional services, apartments, parking, solar, etc., these uses are all designed to work together within the same development project. So next slide. And then just in terms of how the new code is going to be organized, there's an introduction and definition section, which is quite comprehensive. Then the next section introduces the zoning districts, which I've rattled off to you already, and they are reflected in the tables that were in the packet. Then there's a section on land uses, then the bulk regulations, which pertains to setback and height and density, that sort of thing. And then there's a section on non-conforming situations, which I'm not going to go into today. We'll save that for future discussion. And then the second part of the zoning code, which I'm still editing and reviewing the initial draft, but that will come back to you, and that will be introduced, unveiled in a month or two. That part 2 is going to include performance measures, building design standards, landscaping requirements, and then a section on administration and procedures, which again, a lot of this is in our current code. And then separately, Vanderwall is providing us with a new chapter 22, which is our sign code. They presented us with an initial draft a few days ago. I haven't even looked at it yet. We are keeping the sign code separate from the zoning code per the advice of the city attorney. And then the next steps, as I mentioned, this is the first in a series of meetings. The working group that we have established with Randy Bruce representing the Planning Commission, Justin Balwig from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then Spencer Schumacher, who has served for a long time on the Sustainability Committee and will continuing to advise the city on the sustainability angle. I'm working with those three to finish reviewing policy matters that were raised during drafting of part 1 of the ordinance. We had our first meeting, work group discussion last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, and we'll have one more next week, and then we'll bring that policy document for your review in September. I'm hoping for the first Plan Commission meeting in September, which actually, Gretchen, I think that's when you said you're not available for. So of course, I would welcome individual comments as well. If you wish to provide them, Gretchen, prior to that meeting, that would be very welcome. And then future Plan Commission meetings would focus on the part 2 of the zoning code and the sign ordinance. And we also will, at that point, be ready to unveil a proposed zoning map. So taking the districts that are being defined and established and then applying them to every lot in the city. I think that's it for the slides. There's a couple tables here. And then that's not worth going through unless you have specific questions. So I think rather than listening to me talk the rest of the time here, I'd like to get your feedback and happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, I will start. So I would think, Mark, I can see that they use the knowledge base, the accumulated knowledge base of Middleton. So I'm assuming they also use the experience of Vanderwall and Associates with various other cities, what's working. Is that what's happening?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
This is a so the organization of the code is tailored after a template that they have used in various communities, but obviously we are our own unique community, and so there's a lot of great ideas that we find all around the country, and certainly in other places in Wisconsin. So there's no it's worth copying the great ideas, right? But if there's issues that don't apply to our city, then we are using that template and making some adjustments to reflect the sentiments of Middleton. Our experiences here as staff, what we've seen with the planned development districts over the years, we have several dozen of these planned development districts. We are trying to rely on PDD zoning much less in the future. And then obviously there will be a public, we want your input here tonight and in the weeks and months ahead, as well as, of course, when this is ready, we want to get the public's input as well. There'll be a hearing to accept public input before this all gets wrapped up.
So it was very hard to go through this large table. Maybe I did try a little bit, but I went through the other tables. But I had one question and concern that would it become so restrictive that it will limit the creativity or vision of some of the developers or any of those things? Or would it provide some flexibility or some room for them to be creative?
Absolutely. We actually are trying to make it easier to, by having some reduced setbacks, for example, to allow some more flexibility to reflect current development trends and the way people want to live and work and shop, recreate. We want to make sure that it reflects current contemporary standards, quality of life, that experiences that people want. So, for example, by having mixed use zoning embedded in the code, mixed use land uses and zoning classifications, we would then be able to respond to the creativity instead of just having single family zoning, which I would argue is a very monolithic approach that isn't creative. So we allow greater flexibility for somebody having accessory dwelling units, for example, as part of their residence. So I think, Mayor, we really are trying not to be overly prescriptive. There's a lot of data in this table, and the code is going to be longer than what the current code is, but it's not intended to be restrictive and prevent people from doing things that they're doing today.
Okay, I have more questions, but I will get Mike Slavish has his hand up. Mike, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Hey, Mark, generally, I think, my cursory review of this, the changes look appropriate. I did have a question. So going back to the overall goals, of increasing density, I was curious if there are any changes in this that provide for more opportunities. Back to your very comment about single family lots, are there any opportunities for increased density within R1 and R2 zoning categories? And part of that question is, if you think about Hubbard Avenue as an example, really between Park Street and, downtown, you've got single family homes. I'm sure the whole neighborhood is R1, but you have single family homes, we have duplexes, we have threeplexes. And, generally, I think that, it integrates decently into the neighborhood. And so I'm just curious if there's anything here that provides for greater density opportunities in R1 and R2 zoning.
Yes, so the single family category would be divided into low, medium, and higher density. And so the area you just cited, Mike, I think you said Park Street. What area did you mention?
Actually, like Hubbard and Henry both have examples of 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
And so, and it's, I can't tell you today what any individual lot is going to be zoned. That's not the goal here today, but the goal is to make sure that we don't have a lot that created, for example, let's use North Lake or Stonefield as an example. Those lots are 15, 20,000 square feet in many cases.
That's huge, right?
Pardon me?
Yeah, I mean, those are huge lots.
Right, but the setback requirements under R1 zoning, I can tell you that the vast majority of houses in the neighborhood you just cited, and east of downtown here, really the downtown neighborhood, most of those houses that are there today don't comply with R1 zoning standards, especially if you want to build a detached garage, or we've had many variances over the years for requests for someone to take a 1-car garage and have a 2-car garage, and there isn't room in the lot, and oftentimes they have to put the garage in the back of the property as a detached structure, and then they are supposed to have a 30-foot rear setback, but of course the lot's not deep enough to accommodate that in many cases.
Sure.
Although surprisingly, a lot of the lots, especially on Park Street and that block of Henry, actually some of those lots are a lot deeper than people realize. But anyway, the point is we have some standards that are being designed here to have allow greater density for smaller lots and different setbacks, which under and larger impervious surface, maximum impervious surface ratios. In terms of mix of uses that you mentioned, we do have standards that we're developing for, we will be proposing accessory dwelling units and allowing various, we're going to have language in there that addresses vocational uses of properties, which our current code does too, just not very well. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all going to be zoned single family. There might be opportunities to promote mixed use or 2-family or multifamily in some of these properties. That's to be determined.
Yeah, and I think you know the example that I'm thinking of, but here we are. We have in R1 zoning, we allow accessory dwelling units, assuming it meets the requirements in terms of lot size and such and setbacks.
Right.
However, we do not allow accessory dwelling units in an R2, as far as I know. And it's, and if the lot is larger, quite large, it seems like that would be something, worth considering as well. And again, all of this is in the interest of, trying to increase density, and in particular in the more urban settings in downtown, as an example. So just curious.
Yeah, I'm pulling up part 2. which, you know, it's hard to not talk about the rest of the code when we're just trying to introduce the land use tables and bulk dimensions tables. I think I appreciate your comments and feedback. I think some of this will be answered in a future meeting.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
other questions?
My main goal here tonight is to introduce you to the thinking that's going into this, the rewrite of the code. The idea of, we had already touched on the various zoning classifications earlier this year, but just to show you basically the approach that Vanwall has taken with our guidance. And, you know, it's not that I need you to say, you know, we're going to have a shed or storage building permitted here, but not, well, actually, in that case, it's permitted everywhere, but some of the uses later in the list, you'll see permitted in some districts, conditional in another, or not allowed at all. You know, this isn't really, this page here isn't a good example of that. It's not so much to get your individual feedback on each of those. Yeah, if you can go down another screen, maybe, please, Abby, or Daphne. So that, you know, we can pick this one. So, for example, here, on-site structured parking, which is about 10 from the bottom. You'll see that that's the on-site parking lot. I'm talking about the one below that. So where there's nothing in place, the first 6 lines, those are all single family. I assume those are the single family categories, as well as 2-family. We're not going to see structured parking, you know, in the form of a ramp in those districts. But where we do have that, it's a conditional use so that there can be some standards applied in the design of that structure. So, you know, we could spend a lot of time on some of these. You see accessory dwelling unit, which is kind of in the middle, is listed as permitted for the first 6 categories, which is the single family and the 2-family duplex and the flat approach. So that, I think, answers your question, Mike, about that we will be proposing accessory dwelling units to be allowed as a permitted use according to certain standards in those districts.
Mike, does that answer your question somewhat? I see this here, so.
Yeah, and Mayor, I certainly more. I don't want to get too much in the weeds now. I know this is just kind of an introductory session here, but you know, more discussion on that. Thanks.
Yeah. So, Mark. Well, anyone else? So, Mark, how do you like us to use your huge tables? They are, you know, just. I went through them, but what is that which you want us to critically look at?
Well, I basically wanted to hear your questions and any feedback you had, because questions that you ask, undoubtedly, there's going to be people, in, you know, the public will have these questions and probably even more questions. And so a major focus of this project will be how to communicate what the city is proposing to the public in a way that is, you know, that is easily accessible to the public, and so that they can provide meaningful input and feedback. You know, we don't expect people to have a planning degree to understand our zoning ordinance. So we don't want that to be the case. We want it to be easy to use and understand, and very clear. And you know, we've had a number of cases over the years where development patterns, especially the variance requests that we've gotten, indicate that the underlying code is not meeting the needs of the community. And so we are trying to reduce those circumstances where people feel the need to apply for variance, or property owners apply for a variance because the code doesn't work for them, for the circumstances of their property. So we are really trying to make this a new ordinance that is much more reflective of contemporary design standards, community design standards, and preferences for living.
That's really good. So at what stage you are going to send this to various builders and developers to get their input? Because you know, it will be affecting their life. And so I think as far as there are homeowners who are already here, and if it impacts their life, somehow highlight those things that This probably wouldn't, but if it does, then it should be, those are the things which they would want to know.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, I was waiting for you. I didn't want to cut you off. I simply was going to say, I don't see us providing an advance, involving developers ahead of anybody else. I would consider all property owners in the city to have the same opportunity to provide feedback on the ordinance. I don't think that's what you're meant to say, although I kind of heard you say it that way. So I think we're asking for feedback through our work group, and guidance from their committee experiences that they have. Obviously, Justin and Randy are both architects, so that's very helpful perspective from them, especially with some of the design guidelines that we are going to be incorporating in the new code. And Spencer, of course, has a real estate background as well as his strong interest in sustainability. So a sustainable design. So other than that early input, we will be opening this to everybody at the same time for feedback.
And that's a good thing, because we do want to get the input of everyone who will be impacted or affected in some. So I talked to Abby earlier, and I think we will have some of the zoning districts, but we are not going to map them that where they could be. For example, we will have a zoning district for mobile homes, but it won't be any area set aside where mobile homes will be. And the same way I have mentioned in the past, adult entertainment, we will have that zoning area, but it won't be some area set aside. And I think you probably will agree. So that is, we will have a zoning district as is required, but we are not going to be mapping it anywhere in the city. That's accurate, right?
Regarding the, well, you're referring to the email I sent you a couple hours ago. So we are not going to have a separate category for adult-oriented entertainment. That is going to be identified as I think it's in our heavy industrial zoning district, if I remember right.
Okay.
So it's something that is a First Amendment issue that we've sought the input of our city attorney. We can't prohibit an adult-oriented entertainment business from operating in the city, but it has to operate according to certain standards, and it would be through a conditional use process in a B3, or the equivalent to highway commercial, and industrial, which is where that use is allowed today. So we still have a place where that can operate in the city, but it has to be according to certain standards.
And the same way, we will have a mobile home district.
I'd like to know more about the concern about mobile homes and why that's a concern.
Okay.
Why is that? Why are mobile homes a concern?
I don't have any personal concerns. Well, I don't know if we haven't had any mobile homes here in Middleton, and I don't see any reason why I would want to have now. So that's it. So any other questions from any of the other commissioners? Any other questions? This is the early start, and I guess, yeah, we will have more questions and comments as we go along. So do you need any further input? Any input from any of the commissioners? Okay, so that's it, Mark. So do you need anything more?
What I would like
this needs to be referred to the Water Sources Management Commission. Yes, okay, I make that motion. So
I'm sorry, you're making the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Send it to the Water Sources Management Commission for the review the environmental corridor overlay district and shoreline wetland overlay district language that's under development. Yes, absolutely. Need a second.
Rosio, second.
Okay.
And the reason why we are asking you to do that, and you don't have the text in front of you, is we felt it was important. I mean, the Plan Commission is overseeing this project, and rather than simply another committee starting to review a certain component or two of the code, we wanted your awareness and your consent and your knowledge that this was going to go to another committee for their input. We wanted you to seek their input, and they are very interested, by the way, in providing input on that. We just wanted to be transparent and make you aware of it and go through that process. So you will be seeing that language once you get their detailed review.
Oh, I think it's very important, and I think that's the right thing to do. Yes, I agree with you. Okay, any other questions or comments for Mark or anyone from the commissioners? Otherwise, need a motion to approve to send it to Water Sources Management Commission for review of the Environmental Corridor Overlay District. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, we are on to the last item, big item here. This is 2023 operating and capital budget request for the Planning and Community Development Department. Abby. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
So we are starting off our budgeting process for the city. We budget on a calendar year, but the deadline for staff to submit capital and operating budget requests to the finance department is August 19th. And so this is the Plan Commission's chance to take a look at what our staff is proposing and make any changes that you would like to see in our budgets. The first one that Daphne is showing on the screen here is our operating budget, which is pretty straightforward because it's almost entirely made up of salary and benefits for our employees. But we are requesting a few minor changes. The first one is a change to our anticipated revenues for our Plan Commission charges. We are suggesting a budget increase to show that we anticipate collecting an additional $3,000 in fees next year. And then we are proposing to use that $3,000 to increase some of our other line items minimally. The first one being office supplies, advertising and printing costs. That's something that we have very little control over because it's based on required public hearing notices. The third one is communications. We've not been paying cell phones for any of our employees, but we do have a new employee who is working almost completely remotely. And so we would like to issue him a cell phone. And then we're proposing an increase of $1,100 in our training budget. This is because we have more staff now, which results in higher needs for ongoing training, but we also have one employee who recently became AICP certified, and the American Institute of Certified Planners requires a minimum of 32 hours of continuing maintenance credits every 2 years. So we have to pay for that. And then we also need to cover the cost for the actual certification and ongoing maintenance for the program. And then we're also requesting $500 in our other operating expenses. And this is just as things come up. This is just a small budget line that we have to use for unanticipated costs. And we're seeing cost increases across the board on office supplies, fuel, training, and everything. So there is, so what we're proposing is basically budget neutral at this point, but we are also planning to bring forward some recommended increases for Plan Commission charges. Last week, Daphne went through all of our peer communities and looked at their fees. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to increase some of our costs to be more aligned with our peer community. But this $3,000 increase here is it's not yet accounting for any of those changes that we're expecting to bring forward because we don't know how long it'll take to take that through the approval process. Daphne, if you want to flip to the next one. I don't really have much to add on that. That's still in the operating budget. But if you want to flip to the capital line item, next one, there we go. So these are the items that we're proposing in the capital budget. And the first one is the North Mendota Trail construction project. And we don't have a cost estimate in that line yet. Mark was working on putting together some numbers that would help us to move forward with the segment that we don't yet have budgeted and also make sure that we're fully utilizing the $1 million grant that the county provided. Mark, do you have anything to add on that at this point?
No, not since our discussion last week. I've been out, so I'm working on that.
Okay.
So Abby, on this one, I mean, so you are thinking of the area between two branches of the Highland, East and West, or
Yep.
I mean, otherwise that would be done.
Yes, that is the focus. That is the focus, Mayor. We want to be in a position to work with property owners who want to cooperate with the city and accommodate easements for the path. We want to be able to continue that work. It is fundable, reimbursable by the county, and we want to make sure we use the full funding allocation that we secured.
And did you have an indication how much is going to be left from the allocation that was secured? And
Those are the numbers I'm working on right now, Dan. I don't right now because there's a couple incidental expenses that are coming in with utility relocations, things like that. I would envision it's going to be well over 100. Well, I should be careful. Yeah, I would say it'd be well over $150,000. That would be left. Yeah,
Okay.
but don't hold me to that. That's a working number.
But the point is at this point, we don't have any kind of firm numbers to actually put in that slot.
Right. I'm working on those in the next few days. Correct. We don't have firm numbers right now.
So you're not thinking of including the $200,000 which we had put in there. So you are only thinking of using the county money, right?
I want to elaborate on my answer to Dan. So the grant agreement that the county provided us this spring requires that we put in wayfinding signs, for example, compatible with the county's adopted wayfinding sign program for shared use paths. We know that that's a requirement, but I don't know what the costs of doing that are. That's why I can't provide you a detailed number right now. I mean, I can't imagine that signs are, more than a few $1,000s, but I just don't know. The other thing is I want to work with the City of Madison paint shop and get a quote from them for installing, improving the crosswalks that are part of this project to have green painted crosswalks. And I don't have those numbers yet either. So that's why I can't answer your question yet, Dan.
Okay, thank you,
But
Mark.
I'd like your feedback because I can tell you've got something on your mind.
Well, it's hard to take a look at a 2023 budget request when there's nothing in the slot. So, I mean, these numbers are going to have to be put together fairly shortly. We're in August already. So if you have any hope of even presenting it to the council, it's going to have to come fairly soon.
Understood.
Okay, and so the Century Avenue Road, that is actually, you were going to get a grant for that one, right?
Yeah, so the Century Avenue Road Diet, we've included this in here anticipating that we're getting a grant. We expect to know more about the grant this fall, so it's possible at some point through the budget process, we're going to be, if we aren't able to secure the grant funding, we probably would be looking at moving this to a future year so that we could try again. But Daphne has submitted a grant application to the MPO. It's a bipartisan infrastructure law supplemental transportation alternatives program grant. And so that grant can fund up to $32,000 of a $40,000 study. So we are hoping that it looked like we met a lot of their criteria, but we don't know yet if we're going to be able to secure the funding. So the $40,000 that's shown there is the full amount. What we would be asking for from the city budget is $8,000.
Okay, thank you.
It
Now
would be
the-
helpful. It would be helpful in these presentations to in some way be able to denote that so that when we're going through the packet and looking at it, that we could see, of the 40, we're looking at a $32,000 grant. You understand what I'm saying?
Kind of, I use the spreadsheet that the finance department put together, and I had to like break it up in a way where it was visible in the packet. But Daphne, if you go to page 45, that might be an easier one to show it. So that's the description, and then you can see the total project costs are 40, and then capital budget request is 8,000. And then at the bottom, it's showing the 32,000 for donations and grants. This was something that the Ped Bike Transit Committee seemed to be interested in. We got the cost estimate from the consulting firm that handles our TIAs right now, but we probably would look at making this competitive if we were able to secure the funding and move forward. So Daphne, if you want to go down one more page, we'll just stick with this. This one's a little bit more easier to see. So I am proposing a change to this one. This is the e-bike sharing system. What I would like to do is actually remove all of the references to B-Cycle specifically, because I think that we should look at other options in addition to B-Cycle. I know the benefit to working with B-Cycle is that they're already operating in Madison, they're working in Fitchburg and Monona now. But I think that we should explore all of the options. The reason that this is showing without any project costs, we do have a cost estimate for it. It's $160,000. And we would be looking to apply to the MPO for this project as well. And we believe that we could get $120,000 in funding through the MPO. That is based on what they have provided to other communities in their last grant cycle. We had an outreach earlier this year from the city of Madison asking if we wanted to partner on a grant application with them, the city of Fitchburg, and the city of Monona to explore getting bike sharing in all of our communities. And our staff was very reluctant at that time to move forward in applying for a grant because we had not really had a champion on the city council for this project. We've brought it forward in the budget as a request 2 different times and it's been denied both times. So we declined the opportunity to partner on the grant. We wanted to wait and see if they were able to get funding through this program, and they were successful in getting the funding. And so now we have submitted a letter of interest, thanks to Daphne last week, in trying to secure 120,000 of the 160,000 that we would need to fund this program. Our proposal is that the Tourism Commission would fund the other 40,000, which is why we're not showing anything coming out of our own capital budget. I know that their staff has some mixed opinions about whether or not that is something that should be funded with room tax dollars. So that's going to the Tourism Commission on Tuesday night, 1 week from today. Based on what their thoughts are, we would like to reserve the opportunity to put this in under either the capital budget as a request or the TIF as a request, because many of the stations that we're looking at would be within the TIF district. But right now our proposal is for this to be entirely funded through a grant and through the Tourism Commission.
So Abby, would there be a yearly operating cost? Let's say you get this there, and what happens after year 1?
Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, that I would like to steer away from just tying ourselves only to B-Cycle at this point, but the cost estimates that we are working on did come from B-Cycle, and they are proposing a 3-year contract with no annual operating expenses, and then they anticipate being able to get sponsorships in future years from businesses that are located in Middleton. If you've ridden B-Cycle in Madison lately, I rode B-Cycle last weekend in Madison, and many of their stations are sponsored by private businesses.
Okay, thank you.
So do the sponsorships basically take care of the maintenance then in their experience?
That is what they have told us, that they believe that in year 4 that they would be able to go out and secure their own sponsorships that would cover the annual operating costs, but they would be willing to commit to 3 years without annual operating costs. So our goal would be to basically see if we could get the support from the tourism department, because I mean, this is a huge amenity for tourists. So if we could get support through the grant and through the tourism department, that would give us 3 years time to see what the value is to our community. And see if it is something that's beneficial to the businesses that they're willing to help out and sponsor it on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. Other questions for Abby on this one, please? Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Abby.
Okay, the next one is the purchase of the 100 kilowatt solar array at the police station. This is a capital budget request. I would note that it looks like one of some of the numbers from one of the other items carried forward here. This is a request for 100,000. The 100,000 is a placeholder. We are still working with MG&E to try to get an appraisal completed of the solar project. So we don't have the exact amount yet. The 100,000 represents a third of the initial cost of the installation. The solar panels are 7 years old and they're warranted for 20 years. So that might be low, although the cost of solar has come down substantially in the last 7 years. Right now, the arrangement that we have is for the first 7 years of the contract with MG&E, they own the array. The city, specifically the police department, gets the benefit of all the electricity that's generated from the array. But after 7 years, if we want to continue that arrangement, we have to purchase and own the array. We are improving the array right now. We are actually working on putting a bid together for adding battery storage capacity to the array. And that was funded through a grant that Kelly Hilliard received. And so, you know, given that we're improving it and adding value to it, I think that it makes a lot of sense for the city to take ownership of that. I'm just waiting on the final appraised cost from MG&E for that.
So Abby, why is in 2024, the project cost will be 389? What is 389,000?
I apologize. There's an error on this sheet. I think that it was carried forward from a different project. It was something that was included in the budget last year. So the only numbers that should appear here are just the 100,000 in the capital budget item, and then it's just $100,000 total. So
Okay.
I apologize for the mistake. I'll make sure to get that corrected before it gets submitted to finance.
So what is the cost benefit here? For example, how much we save in terms of having this electricity? Of course, our goal is, you know, different too. So, and what will be the cost, any operational cost? I mean, you don't want it to become a burden on the city, right?
Yeah, the main operating costs associated with solar is there is an inverter replacement that's typically required after about year 12. I don't have that number off the top of my head of what that current cost of that is, so I can get that to you, Mayor.
Okay.
And then I also don't know exactly the electricity savings, but I know that it's about 25% of what the police department uses, but I can get that from Kelly as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
because it would be interesting to know if there's 13 years of use left at $100,000, what the city's, what the payback time is.
Okay. I will find out.
Thank you, Dan. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Abby.
Okay, the next item is a scanning service for our plan commission files. We have a room, if you're familiar with City Hall, it's conference room A. That is an underutilized space because it's mostly just storage of our files. Our finance and administration department are interested in trying to put an employee in that space because we're pretty cramped right now, which is why we have one employee that is working fully remotely because he doesn't have a desk to sit at City Hall. So they want to better utilize that space. And we thought, well, if the city is doing this community campus plan and there's a possibility that we are going to move at some point, it would make a lot of sense to get those files scanned so that they're electronic right now. I know if during the height of the pandemic, we were kind of taking turns who would go into City Hall and check the old dusty files so that we could stay safely distanced from people. The reason that the cost is so high is because we would like for there to be a little bit more than just putting everything into a machine, feeding it through, and then having like a PDF that's 500 pages long. We would actually like there to be some file naming done to actually do it correctly so that we're not stuck with a PDF that we're flipping through and it's not searchable. And so this cost estimate was based on what our office manager, who's no longer with the city, she had done some work to get some of our other files scanned, and she roughly estimated that she thought it would cost about 20,000, but we haven't had a company come out and look through yet, so that's kind of a placeholder too at this point.
So this is the cost of, personal cost who will be doing the scanning, not the scanners.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it would be a service we would
Okay.
consult with. We did use one service to do a lot of the other files that we have at the city, but these are the oldest files, and some of the paper copies are even becoming really difficult to read. These are like 1940s, 1950s, 1960s. So this would kind of be the last segment, the ones that we don't really access that often anymore, but we still need to be able to go back and look at the historical record. So it's important that we keep them.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be nice to digitize them before we lose them.
Yes. Yep, exactly.
Any other questions or comments about this scanning service for Plan Commission files from the commissioners? Okay, let's go next one, Abby.
Yeah, so that is the last one that we're asking for in the budget for next year, for 2023. The next item is the Conservancy Trailhead project, and I'll start to go over these a little bit quicker because we're not asking for approval right now. The main change that I'm suggesting we look at for this project is that instead of splitting it into two phases, which actually I'm the one that previously had proposed splitting it up and having the parking lot constructed first and then doing the building later, I'm now thinking it makes more sense to go ahead and get it done as one project. And the reason for that is we had gone out and we got a $200,000 grant from the DNR, but we use the Century Avenue Bridge project as our match for the grant. The problem with that is that we were then locked in and tied to Dane County's timeline for the bridge, and Dane County is telling us 2025 now for the bridge. We did get an extension on our grant, so the 200,000 at this point is still secure for the city, but if we spend any of the money on the trailhead, we lose the opportunity to get the grant. So we have to wait until Dane County is ready to start the bridge, which they are working on the design now. They started working on that in July, but they're not anticipating constructing it until 2025. Well, at that point, I'm thinking if we're tearing all that up, I don't think we want to phase the trailhead then over, two different phases, because then we're reorganizing construction again, we're having to bid it again. I think if we're waiting that long to construct phase one, we might as well just do the whole thing at once and get it all done. We might be able to try to get some additional grant funding that could help. I don't want to make any promises because there are a lot of rules with how you match federal dollars and state dollars, and we want to make sure that we're complying with all of those. But this would be doing the design for the trailhead in 2024 and doing the construction in 2025 along with the bridge.
Okay, questions for Abby. So Abby, I think that we did decide that it will be a very simple shelter, just like you got some, well, anyway, so I won't dwell on it. So it's not going to be a, with a kitchen, all of those things. Okay.
And this is the cost estimate for the simple shelter. It just goes to show that commercial construction is not cheap. And so that scaled back version where we worked with the Parks, Recreation and Forestry Commission and CLC to come up with the really scaled back design. This is the cost estimate that we've received for that.
But this also includes the bridge and all of those other things, right?
No, this is just for the trailhead.
Just
for the trailhead. Yeah.
What?
Oh, you mean the pedestrian bridge? I'm sorry, Mayor.
Yes.
Yes, you're correct. Yes, it does include the pedestrian bridge.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay. All right. Okay, questions for Abby on this from the commissioners? Anyone? Any questions for Abby? Okay, well, all right, Abby, go to the next one.
Yep, and this has been in our SIP for a while, and we're kind of waiting for the aviary project to get fully completed before we propose any changes to the streetscaping. But this is to help fill in the gaps in the pedestrian network in that area and improve street lighting and streetscaping. And then also adding sidewalk along both sides of Lisa Lane and along the east side of Laura Lane. And this is using TIF funding.
I think that it's needed too. I guess it will change that area completely. And I think, you know, considering that Jacob's 2 projects and Avery, it's about time we did it. So any questions or comments? Elder Ramsey or anyone? Chris, close to you. Gretchen, Mike, anyone? So
So the next one is undergrounding utilities on Century Avenue. This is also in the
yes, Abby, go ahead.
this is also in the vicinity of the trailhead, and in talking with our staff about this, Mark suggested.
You're breaking up. Can't hear you.
Oh, can you all hear me okay?
I can, it might be on your end, Mayor.
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Mayor, I think you might be breaking up. I don't see your video. So Mark suggested that maybe this would be a good project to do at the same time that we're doing the bridge and the trailhead and kind of get that whole historic Pheasant Branch area cleaned up. And so our proposal is to use TIF 5 funding for this in 2025. And Daphne, if you want to flip to the next one. Mark, do you want to go over the Cayuga Connector?
Sure. This has been on our bicycle plan for over a decade now. The idea is to connect have a downtown Middleton connection with the Pheasant Branch Trail Network via, you know, in other words, if you come from Pheasant Branch Conservancy at the roundabout, you would follow there would be a new path following the Highway 12 off ramp to
Yeah, could you wait about 10, 15 minutes?
Mayor, we can hear you.
Well, I had gotten disconnected and I'm back again. So,
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to let you know we can hear you.
yeah, okay, good.
So,
Good, thank you.
so the path would go along the off ramp and then south along the edge of the development, coming out at the fire station at the intersection of University and Cayuga. So it would be nice to have that connection, but there are some constraints and we need to investigate that further. But for now, it's in here as a placeholder because it would be really good to have that connection.
Mark, just a quick question on that. Is that just construction costs? Do we have or do we have to obtain any easements for that part?
There would be a tiny easement necessary from a corner of someone's backyard that butts up against the on-ramp at Highway 12 on-ramp. We haven't broken down this cost. In fact, this number has probably been in here as this. We haven't changed this number in years, right, Abby?
Yes.
Yeah. So right now it's just an estimate. We haven't done any sort of investigation to come up with a better number, and that's one reason why it's later, in the planning cycle here, several years out.
Sure, that's no problem. I was just curious as to whether or not we were going to need to obtain easements.
There, an easement of that property that's on Rowley Court, and then also we would need to work with the fire district.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? So Abby, I missed part of that utility undergrounding on Century Avenue. Why did you pick that small section there? Are there the utility undergrounded on either side of it or what?
Mark? Do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, so there's only a small section that is probably not even 1,000 feet long. So it's between Branch Street and the VFW, essentially, Middleton Glen. That is above ground. Everything west and east of that is, well, everything west of that is below ground. And east of that, I don't think there's anything on the north side of Century until you get past Goodwill. But I off the top of my head, I don't remember. But this part is right in front of Stagecoach Apartments, and it's an eyesore to say the least. And we really feel it's as part of the historic district, this area with the Stam House, we would really like to see that those overhead lines buried.
Except that we have, those overhead lines all over the city, except the university and part of the Parliament. Anyway, I just wondered how we picked this one. It's quite a bit of money, $600,000. So, okay.
Well, you burying utility lines along Parmenter Street and other parts of the city has been very expensive as well. I think the emphasis, the reason why this stands out is because of Stam House and just the desire to have this be a more historic, to celebrate this as a historic part of the city.
Okay,
I assume the tie into the trailhead was the impetus to.
Well,
do it.
actually, this also was raised several years ago. This is not a new idea. This was out there even before Stagecoach Apartments was constructed. So this is not something that is a new initiative.
But the year is tied in with when we would anticipate
Right.
building the trailhead. So that's why we're proposing 2020.
And I would add the
therefore
power lines.
included it into the TIF budget.
Right.
Yes.
And I would add that the power lines west of here, Middleton Glen and west, were all buried in conjunction with the Middleton Hills project. I presume by the developer back then. Not at, I presume it wasn't at city expense.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Abby.
This next item is just, this is the amount that the city approved in the TIF agreement many years ago for Meritor. And we just keep this in the capital budget each year as a reminder that's been approved. It will have to be renegotiated because the years are not going to align, but that is something that the city has approved in an agreement. And then the last one is the community campus. And this is also a placeholder because we really don't know at this point when the city will be ready to move forward on a community campus project, or if and what TIF eligible expenses are in there. So this is just listed as a placeholder.
Excellent, Abby. Excellent. Okay. Any questions for Abby for any of the projects or anything? Abby is ready for it. Otherwise, need a motion to approve.
Slavish will make a motion to approve as presented.
Need a second. Do we have a second?
Harp second.
Go ahead, Chris, go ahead.
Chris,
Harp second.
okay, all right. Now let the questions begin. Any questions from the commissioners? Otherwise, the motion is to approve the 2023 operating and capital budget request for planning and community development department as proposed. All those in favor of the motion-
May I suggest, instead of as proposed, as Abby noted, there were a couple edits that are going to be made.
Okay, okay,
still.
yes, yes.
So you're approving the framework, if I may suggest that.
Yes,
In the list
yes,
of projects, recognizing we'll finalize it.
yes, 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 absolutely.
Okay.
And, okay, with that change, all those in favor of that motion say aye.
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 Anyone against it? Okay. Pass unanimously. You know what, now we are at the end of the agenda, so. So is there anything else missing here, Abby? I think that's it.
That's it.
Unless somebody wants to share anything else, otherwise we need a motion to adjourn.
Raise your move to adjourn.
Need a second. Slavish seconds, it looks like, and
Sure.
okay. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Go out and enjoy your dinner. So, good night.
Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.